欲望の迷路に迷い込んだ怪獣の一撃は激流の末路涙に濡れた攻撃鉄を神へのレジスタンス十字架のレクイエム光と影のゲーム
You have every right to be upset, so leave the righteous fury to this podcast. Welcome everyone to Super Audio Robo Podcast Z. I'm Ark, that's Neff, and this is the show where we recommend you the finest mecha content for your cultural and artistic development. And this particular show that we have to talk about is the most modern thing that we have on our entire list.
Yeah, literally this came out last year. It is as modern as you come.
It's Grendizer U, a return of a super robot, very, very popular and significant in Japan, but also very, very beloved in certain countries around the world.
Yeah, this is, if you live in certain parts of the world, then Grendizer is almost like a religion to you with how popular this show is.
Like a formative piece of media for like entire generations of people.
Yeah, if you're a Western fan, if you're a Western anime fan or whatever, it's hard to really get across how formative this was for a lot of people in other regions.
We'll definitely explain a bit more about that in detail, but obviously, you know, as we have to with each of these episodes, we got to get into our synopsis, explaining what is this show? What is Grendizer U?
Yeah.
Well, the basic plot goes like this. A mysterious flying saucer crash lands in the Middle East, and at the impact site is a young man seemingly with no memories of his past. Koji Kabuto and Saya Koyumi find him and give him a place to stay during their time in Riyadh, giving them the name of Daisuke Uman. However, the massive army of the Vega Empire arrives on Earth and reawakens Daisuke's memories. He is Duke Fleed, Crown Prince of the planet Fleed, and the one responsible for destroying his home with the powerful robot Grendizer. Now Duke must use this terrifying machine to protect Earth and avoid losing control of its power once again. Plot is vaguely similar in some areas to, you know, what the original story was like back in the 70s. Obviously some differences in location. It's what you would expect for a brand new anime basically made to celebrate almost 50 years of this particular super robot's existence.
Yeah, also it's just really funny to me that this starts off it doesn't start off in Japan like a lot of other robot shows. It starts off in the Middle East.
Yep, there's a very deliberate reason for that.
Oh yeah, there is.
Which we could use to segue into our prehistory. Got to get into some of the background as to how this show came about. Well, as mentioned already, Grendizer U marks the first time Grendizer would return to anime since the 1975 original. This project was basically greenlit so it would coincide with the anime's 50th anniversary, or at least close to it. Technically 49th, because it was, it was in the summer of 2024 that it had first aired. The origins for the project for Grendizer U can actually be traced back a little bit earlier, though. On the Japan side, at least, there was a design contest in 2022 called Project G, which was hosted by Go Nagai and a few other select judges that basically oversaw submissions for various mecha designs, saucer beasts primarily, basically the enemy monster of the week robots, effectively seeing which ones would be worthy enough to get used in a future anime project. I can't really find much more details about Project G other than it existed. I'm pretty sure the rest of the specifics of what possibly won in the submissions is probably on the Japan side of the internet that I'm not as well versed enough to travel, but I assume that this anime had the results of that particular contest. But outside that, we keep making this illusion all the time, or not even illusion, at other points we've explicitly said as much. Grendizer's popularity in Japan it's not small. I mean, obviously, it's not equally as big as, the main franchise that it's a part of, which is Mazinger. Go Nagai, I think it's, often had to, clear up that sort of misconception, the idea that, Grendizer's just not as popular to the point that, that no one wants to acknowledge it. But really, it's, the thing that really props up Grendizer more than anything is the original anime getting exported to 3 specific countries
Yeah.
that gravitated to it in a very huge way in the late 70s and early 80s. France, Italy, and Saudi Arabia. One of those countries in particular, Saudi Arabia, I think like anyone that is like familiar enough with like kind of like the business dealings of like certain investments that are being put into various like forms of entertainment, Saudi Arabia has been like very interested in pumping a lot of money into that, regardless of how you feel about where that money is coming from due to your thoughts on like how shitty the government of Saudi Arabia is. That's a different topic. Doesn't change the fact they're putting money in it. It's very easy to assume that the push for like a brand new Grendizer anime in this day and age is like another result of that type of like foreign initiative, especially because the company that serves as the show's producer, Manga Productions, is a Saudi Arabia owned company.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've ever heard of like an anime that was co-funded by Saudi Arabia of all places. Like I cannot think of literally any other like product before this or after.
Yeah. Looking at Manga Productions' website, I did take a gander real briefly, and they definitely have like a few other things that they have like invested money in. Like either it was anime that was like made specifically in Japan, or if it was, I don't know, quote, anime the same way Avatar The Last Airbender is anime, where it's like largely the style. I couldn't tell, but it's very much the sort of thing where like they were definitely investing money in having specific anime IPs made, you know, with the intent of something that could like appeal to kind of like the Saudi Arabian like audience, essentially. I can't really remember all the names, but like you look at some of the examples on Manga Productions website, and it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely dealing a lot more with like, you know, like actually tying in Middle Eastern culture in specific areas that like it would absolutely resonate with like those type of audiences, because, you know, especially at this point in time, anime is a big fucking deal. It's like we're more or less past the point of it just being like sort of like the punching bag. But I mean that doesn't excuse the fact that there are still some anime fans that are fucking weirdos, but it's considerably more socially acceptable to watch an anime and not get shit for it.
Yeah, nowadays you see more people who have grown up with anime and appreciate anime more as like an art form. And a lot of those people are in the industry now, which is why you see a lot of anime influences in like just general animation nowadays too.
Yeah, very specific like art style trends that come from Japan have like bled over into like all other regions, like like basically contributions to the whole animation medium. That said, though, yeah, this is still, you know, even with like the money and funding coming from Saudi Arabia, this is still an anime created in Japan, naturally, and that obviously means that like it has a lot of major talents being brought into the fold on this one that are all from Japan itself. Like, least of all, Mitsuo Fukuda and Shun Kudo as serving as Grendizer U's directors. Yes, we know. Well, like, it's Mitsuo Fukuda. Let it be known that we're talking about like another show in this case where this is a perfect example of maybe just don't have him touch anything Gundam and we're fine.
It seems like anytime he touches something that's not Gundam, it turns out to be a perfectly good show. I don't know why it's Gundam specifically that turns out to be a train wreck when he's involved in it.
It clearly just has to be something regarding like putting way too much time and thought into like his particular alternate universe continuity, especially because I seem to recall that was basically like a joint creative effort between him and his late wife.
Yeah.
But at least in this case, yeah, it's like two directors. More specifically, I guess it's more accurate to say like Fukuda was like chief director, which is kind of I always hate these kind of like fucking adjectives that have to be added on top of like a director role, like chief director, executive director. Just say fucking director or producer in this case, because it really makes it sound like Shun Kudo was like the real director on the ground floor for the whole thing. Although you can still see a lot of Fukuda's like particular touches in like certain visual aspects or story conventions in here. You know, like if you're familiar with like any of his works, both the good and the bad, you could definitely see it. But still, point still remains the same. Just let him keep doing super robot stuff. That's all I'm gonna say.
He does seem to have a talent for that one.
But other major contributors in this case, you know, we got like a major writer in this instance, Ichiro Okochi, who like had previously worked on various Gundam anime and Code Geass as a writer. But for character designer, we have Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, most famous for his works like on various like early Gainax anime like Nadia, and most obviously Neon Genesis Evangelion. And that's just like to name a few as far as like some of the major creative people they got on for this project. I mean, like with the money being given to them through manga productions, it's like they could definitely afford to like have something resembling an all-star cast for this, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
While it is produced by manga productions, you know, the animation isn't being done there. They provide like the funding, the sponsoring, and all that stuff. The actual animation studio behind this, however, would be done by Studio Gaina, not Gainax. I know it sounds similar. Yeah, there's a difference.
This was so confusing when I saw this. I was like, wait, that's okay. It sounds like Gainax, but it's not Gainax, but it's kind of Gainax.
The short of it is that Studio Gaina's like origins was that it was originally a Fukushima offshoot of Gainax. Like I think it was just called Gainax Fukushima because I guess in the period of time when Gainax was barely producing anything new and like racking up all their financial problems before they went bankrupt, they decided to open a second studio.
Yeah.
And that studio eventually was able to break off from Gainax and I think is now owned by like a bigger company now, which I forget the name of, but regardless, they at least got to live, whereas Gainax didn't. But it's the sort of thing where like, because I remember like all like the promo videos for this and when I saw like it was Studio Gaina and I was like, hold on, the name seems weird. Also, the character designs look very similar to stuff from like Ava and like, that's when I put two and two together, that it's like... I guess you could say it's like, well, it's not the overwhelming amount of like the show's DNA. There's a little bit of that old Gainax DNA in here, I guess.
There are some saucer beasts that might as well have been angels in Eva or something.
Oh boy, yeah, no kidding. Even the extent to which they kind of like, you know, push characterization forward in a way that, like, it doesn't feel like the 70s original anime, nor does it feel like any of the other Dynamic Pro, like, super robot anime that came out, like, during the 2000s onward, you know? Like the various Mazinger anime that we got from, like, Kaiser onward feel much different compared to this.
Yeah, this feels way more melodramatic, I guess, if you want to say that. I mean, would you say it's melodramatic?
Maybe a little. I don't know. I at least when it comes to like certain romantic tensions, I guess it does feel that way. But eventually, Grendizer U would air as part of the 2024 summer season lineup on July 6th and conclude on September 28th at 13 episodes. Because this is the timeline we live in, where no anime, unless you're Toei, gets to go past 13 episodes at a time. We'll have more to say about that in our why we recommend, because like this is kind of an axe to grind. But we got other priorities that we need to get through first. Like we got to talk about our primary mecha, you know, the stars of the show.
Yeah.
And obviously the biggest star of all is Grendizer, which dwarfs Mazinger in size and is capable of being a god of destruction should its pilot be overwhelmed by negative emotions. It's like, this is something where, like, something that, like, I really appreciate about this version of Grendizer compared to previous incarnations. Mazinger, from the very beginning, had always been, like, built around, like, this sort of idea that, like, with its power, you know, its pilot can become either a god or a devil. You know, like, Mazinger could save the world or destroy it. But I feel like by the time Grendizer rolled around, like, all the way back in the 70s, there wasn't really that question anymore.
No, it really wasn't.
So instead, they have Grendizer just being like, it is a robot that is like the guardian of Planet Fleet. And in this case, it's explicitly stated that like the Planet Fleet itself did not build Grendizer. It was basically given to them because it is a robot of such mysterious origin and like insanely destructive power that it kind of brings back that become a god or a devil type of mantra. I think it helps bring what has always felt like a sort of distant like part of the Mazinger series more in line with the franchise that it's supposed to be a part of. But at least for Grendizer, even with all that power, thankfully, not anyone could just jump into Grendizer's cockpit and be able to pilot it. They have to be like a select few people that have the qualifications by becoming a Starker Knight, which is like some manner of like physical training and like genetic modification or all this other shit to basically be worthy of like piloting it. And when it comes to the design and its powers, like anyone that is familiar with Grendizer will recognize that it is absolutely Grendizer to the core. Same color scheme. It's got like the same golden horns sticking out of the sides of its face. Like the sort of like shoulder blades that can like eject out to form the double Harken, which is kind of like a sort of like a double-sided blade axe, and all the familiar Mazinger robot colors: black, white, traces of red and blue. I am always distracted by like the piece that is like kind of on its waist area because it makes it look like it has a gigantic codpiece.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of sticks out a little, but
it's like, what's the xenomorph head doing on Grendizer's dick?
It's a good question, I feel. But I think generally I kind of like this design a lot. It's a good, I guess, modernization of the classic design while keeping a lot of what made it so appealing.
Yeah, like, because you get stuff like the sort of like the red fins that kind of spiral around the forearms. And like in this version, I don't think it ever happened in the original manga or anime, but the way that they kind of like fold forward to in order to form like a drill, like for the screw crusher punch, is genuinely awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really cool like updated design that still feels very Super Robot. Like it's got like it's not overly detailed in like the paneling and like the surface areas. It is still very tubular looking, you know, in its limbs and everything.
Yeah,
it's great.
Look, I think like Mazinger Infinity is a pretty good movie, but I don't really like how Mazinger looks in that movie all that much. There's just something about the paneling.
I kind of agree, yeah.
It just doesn't do it for me.
It's so distracting considering that the proportions of Mazinger and the other robots in that movie are like basically accurate to their Toei incarnations. But speaking of Mazinger, guess who's also in this show?
Well, for like one episode.
well, technically more than one episode, but like but we'll get more into that in the second half. Regardless, it's Mazinger Z, the OG super robot itself, with a design that is, you know, at first glance, you would think, oh yeah, that's exactly Mazinger Z. Except, no, there's some slight differences. The red chest fins on like on its body that it uses for breast fire are like noticeably more curved, as well as the powder that Koji pilots and docks with Mazinger's head is white colored instead of red. And part of this, I believe, is supposed to like basically kind of be more accurate to what early versions of like the Mazinger Z manga depicted Mazinger Z as. Yeah, that was the first thing like I basically noticed, because otherwise it definitely does not have any of like the other like Toei anime like design editions that it made back in the 70s, where like the forearms and legs were like a dark blue color. Like it is very much adhering, like even though the red outline around Mazinger's eyes was also like a manga specific kind of design trait. So seeing all that kind of in full force with Mazinger Z in the first episode, where it gets to briefly remind you that, oh yeah, Mazinger Z is still the shit.
It's still
it's like, yeah.
It still rules even after all these years.
So like those are like the two main robots. One of those main robots goes out of commission very, very quickly. This is an addition to Grendizer. Like I had half a mind to include this in the discussion about like Grendizer, you know, the robot itself. I think it's more appropriate to talk about this as like a category, and that is the Spacers, which are like giant circular UFO looking type devices. Because if it's no surprise to anyone, Grendizer originally being in the 70s, its full title was UFO Robo Grendizer. There was definitely like a cultural obsession growing in Japan and around the world, really, as far as like the idea of like, what if extraterrestrials are real, because of all like the fucking UFO sightings and hoaxes related to that. that is basically like culture and real life influencing like specific design decisions in the media.
And I have a confession that might ruin my my mecha cred a little, actually.
Go ahead, I've said worse.
I'm not a big fan of the Spazer look with Grendizer. I've never been a fan of it.
Fair enough.
I know super robots are goofy, but this is a little too much even for me. I'm like, I like it better when it's just when he's riding it on like as like a surfboard or something.
Oh god, what is the name of that particular thing that like you see certain mobile suits in like Universal Century Gundam riding on?
I don't remember the name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I also thought the same thing. Grendizer is so much cooler when it is like riding on top of the Spazer, kind of like those, rather than docking with it in a way where it's like you don't even see the body anymore. You just see the head sticking out the front.
I like the hands are on the side, and I'm like, yeah. This is just a personal preference thing, definitely.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, we're the only people that are talking on this podcast anyway. Our opinions are absolute.
It's true. Our opinions are the only ones that matter. Sorry, listeners.
You want another opinion that actually matters?
What?
I think the show actually agrees with us because it introduces 3 additional Spazers that combine with Grendizer in ways that are all infinitely cooler than the main Spazer.
Yeah, they are so much better looking, especially when they dock. It's like, oh yeah, this one with the drills, turns out that's cooler.
We basically got like the double Spazer, the drill Spazer, and the marine Spazer. You know, double basically kind of defined by like just like twin laser setup. Drill, as the name implies, it has drills because drills are cool. This is the law.
Mm-hmm.
And marine Spazer, where like it's designed for like underwater purposes, you know, because you gotta have like your contingency for underwater combat, even if it only shows up for one fucking episode. Sorry, Getter 3.
I don't know why that's the thing, but it is apparently sometimes.
You know, it's another thing that I actually like about these 3 specific Spazers and their introduction.
What's that?
Because of how like they combine with Grendizer for different purposes, is like, you remember how like in Steel Jeeg, the gimmick of like Jeeg's entire makeup is that like it's a robot where the body parts are all magnetized to each other, and that means that they can all easily swap out with like other components.
I do remember, yeah.
And like the Spacers combining with Grendizer remind me a lot of like similar combinations in like Steel Jeeg, Steel God Jeeg especially. You know, like the mid 2000s anime sequel thing. That's basically the Spacers in a nutshell, you know? Like they're flying saucer devices. The main Spazer is all right, I guess. The others are cooler. The other 3 can also like they could dock together like to form just like gigantic rocket ship. You see this near the end of the series, by the way. It's pretty cool. It's the sort of thing where like you see it, and even knowing full well that this is a show that is like being made for old fans and not kids, part of me just goes, damn, I want toys of this.
I mean, that's the other appeal of super robot shows. Even if they're not like kid focused, you still want toys of them. They still look cool. It's like you want them on your shelf.
They're so cool. Yeah.
They appeal to the inner kid in you.
Exactly. And isn't it better to at least have some semblance of that still around?
Hell yeah, it is. I'm all for it.
So finishing up like on our primary mecha, we have the saucer beasts. Not any particular examples because, being perfectly honest, it's hard for me to remember specific saucer beasts in the same way that I remember specific Kikaijus from Mazinger.
Yeah.
But that's just because I think we've had more time to be exposed to Garada K7 and Doubles M2 getting the shit kicked out of them over and over. But regardless, yeah, these are basically the Kikaiju replacement that exists for Grendizer to fight, because only Grendizer can really stand up to them in the long term. They do have at least like their own unique specific like naming scheme, much in the same way that like Kikaiju in the original Mazinger basically have like a name followed by, you know, a letter and number kind of at the end of it. And here it's more like one word that I think could be easily used as like a onomatopoeia or sound effect, just repeated twice. So like goru, I guess, as an example. I forget if that even is an actual saucer beast, but you wouldn't know. That sounds accurate. That's basically their naming scheme.
Oh, they all kind of blend together, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, You know what doesn't blend in with like any of these saucer beasts?
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about Aquadizer and Zeolodizer.
Oh, please, let's talk about them.
Yes, straight up the coolest fucking addition to this show as far as the mecha lineup.
I adore the designs of both of these robots. They're so cool.
Yeah, it's like the saucer bees are obviously just like, they're just giant mooks that exist for like Grendizer to like beat up week to week and all that. Aquadizer and Zeolodizer are very much like the rival boss characters, if you want to go with that sort of analogy. These are mecha that are designed to be like comparable to Grendizer, at least in terms of like proportions and stature. They are piloted by Starker Knights, which is also like the same requirement that Grendizer needs for anyone to sit in its cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, like, they're on another level from the saucer beasts themselves, and like Grendizer, they also come with their own spacer, which they can use to obviously dock with, or the more cooler way is to just ride on top of it.
Hell yeah, and they do that a lot, and it still looks better than docking.
Mm-hmm.
And both these designs also have like more of a night motif going on, especially with like the Zeolodizer with its like cape and everything.
Definitely, yes. And Aquadizer, kind of in reflection of its pilot, has a much more like effeminate type of design to it. That's the thing. Obviously, these are like designs you'll see pop up like multiple times, at least one more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely is the sort of thing where like these are the two other Dizers, I guess you could call them, just to keep them in the same category as Grendizer. Like, these are the only other two that you see, and I sure as hell wish that we could have gotten more. Like, just introduce more Starker Knights while we're at it. But by the same token, I feel like that would probably get to a point of they probably don't have any more characters that they could pull from the original anime to put in that position.
Yeah.
Because, as you'll find with our characters, they pull a lot from the original anime. Like, just about every major character that you could think of from the 70s original makes its way into Grendizer U in one form or another. So we'll definitely get into our primary characters now, talking about characters that are on the side of the Photon Power Labs, because we're still part of the Mazinger franchise, and, you know, you gotta have, like, your home laboratory base in Japan, where all the heroes are united around. And that includes our main character, Daisuke Uman, aka Duke Fleed, who, as we described in our synopsis, the hero of the story, an amnesiac, and is like initially reluctant to use Grendizer again after regaining his memories, because rather than simply taking Grendizer to flee his home when the Vega Empire decided to invade it, he did a fuck up.
Yeah, it's a small fuck up, let's just say that.
No big deal. Just became racked with grief to the point that it drove Grendizer crazy and destroyed his entire home.
And might have killed a lot of people, yeah.
At least for what it's worth, as much as there's a bit of that angst in his character at the beginning, he is someone that definitely like improves a lot as it goes on, because he has the help of like his new allies on Earth, learns to better control Grendizer, and his last name, as part of like, you know, his Earth identity, Daisuke Uman, like that comes from the fact that one of our characters in this show, Genzo Uman, is a scientist who agrees to adopt him as his son because he is apparently so excited to have made contact with extraterrestrials. Genzo's a fun character for the few times that he's like given room to shine, really.
He's just an excitable dad. But he's not the only excitable person in this cast, right? Because of our next character.
As expected from having Mazinger Z in this anime, obviously that means we gotta have Kochi Kabuto, who is wealthy as fuck in this anime, and is best buds with Daisuke when he arrives on Earth, to the point where I told you as much before you had started watching this show. And I feel like even if I didn't tell you, I'm pretty sure you would have come to the exact same conclusion that I did. But these two are the one true pairing.
They are very much the OTP of this show. Like, if you watch the show, you'll understand as well. These two are the bestest of bros.
Koji is unbelievably supportive,
which is
like it is amazing, especially when you consider back in the original 70s anime, Koji was not like this.
No,
he was kind of a dick.
It was way more antagonistic, so I appreciate them just turning around this and asking, what if he was just the best friend you've ever had, who's always there for you, is always gonna bro fist you and just give you a hug whenever you need it, that kind of bro.
The best kind of friend you wish you could have at any time. As far as that goes, Koji, even like, yeah, he was in the original 70s anime, but like, he also, like, I think with the exception of like a cameo or two from Boss in the 70s anime, like, Koji, I think, was basically like the only mainstay from the original Mazinger cast in what was otherwise an entirely new lineup of characters. Fortunately, in Grendizer U, Sayaka Yumi and her dad, Genosuke Yumi, are present as well, because, I mean, we're at the Photon Power Labs. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Professor Yumi and Professor Uman basically kind of working side by side, and you do get a sense that they are kind of polar opposites in certain regards, mainly in terms of the fact that they are working with an alien.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little later, but yeah.
Just know that Professor Yumi's not a bad guy. He's just kind of a well-meaning, like, skeptist, is the best way that I could put it. But I do appreciate all the same that, like, this is a Grendizer anime that does not forget that this is still part of the Mazinger franchise, combines both aspects of it, but never at any point does it feel like the Mazinger side of the equation overshadows the Grendizer part of it. So that's why we're going to get into the remaining characters, which are all specific to Grendizer, such as Hikaru Makiba. And this is by far the most different a character has been from their original 70s counterparts. Because instead of just some random girl whose family owns a ranch and Daisuke like stays there during his off time, she's instead a mysterious girl from Okami Island who seems to know a lot about Grendizer and the legends surrounding it.
Yeah, they definitely do a lot more with her in this series, and I feel like she's another character where that made me feel like I wish this show had more episodes.
Yeah, because she's very mysterious to start. And because of like what she knows about Grendizer, she's ultimately the one that actually provides like the additional spacers to help in the battle against the Vega Empire. And also, I really do like her design.
Yeah.
Like, it is obviously, as you'd expect, very different, much like her personality, but like I do think it makes her stand out a bit more, especially when you consider another female character in this that looks a lot more like the typical Go Nagai female character. But like Hikaru feels very much more like her own person, to the point where it's like her personality can be very extreme, where she is looking for someone of her righteous heart and will kill anyone who is irredeemably wicked. Those are her words, not ours.
It makes her stand out way more than her original like character, who was just the girl, I guess.
She was the girlfriend until Daisuke's actual fiance finally makes a return.
Yeah.
But speaking of like other female characters I was talking about that resembles more of the typical Go Nagai female character, we have Duke's sister, Maria Fleed. She's the younger sister and flees planet Fleed in search of her brother, arrives on Earth, comes to help him in his battle with the Vega Empire, and it's interesting as well because this kind of gets into, I think because Sayaka is in this show, it throws a wrench in the fact that in the original 70s anime, Maria and Koji were both getting set up as being that specific pairing for the show. You can't really have that, although I kind of wish they tried to tease that so that we could have classic scenes of Sayaka getting violently angry at Koji for being such an awful man. But instead, all you really get is Maria being kind of a brat, being like, wow, what a backwater planet, and this seems to get really under Koji's skin during her introductory episode, that they just start like constantly competing in games of all kinds and just shit-talking each other the whole way, which I guess that's still something.
It's something, at least.
They fucking bond over playing Beyblade, for Christ's sake.
I mean, she's also like a 14-year-old kid as well, so it makes sense for her, I guess.
But that's basically like the extent of like our main hero cast on the side of the Photon Power Labs. The Vega Empire, on the other hand, is like is quite stacked in terms of its roster.
Yeah.
Because leading the charge in the invasion against Earth is Gandalf, general that is in charge of the invasion force, retains his signature traits from the original, in which he has a second person, Lady Gandalf, inside his head that pops out when his face splits open like a pair of doors.
It's never explained.
It's as weird as it sounds.
It is never explained. It never needs to be explained. Fine, okay, just he just pops out of his face.
He's also voiced by Takehito Koyasu.
Yeah, that definitely took me by surprise when I heard his voice.
Like, again, I am not kidding that we're going to have more than enough times during this podcast in which we will point out where the voice actor of Dio shows up in multiple of these shows.
Turns out he's a very prolific voice actor who's been around a lot.
Following that, you have Blackie, Gandalf's right-hand man, who constantly pays lip service to stay on his good side. Kind of extra, the way he does it sometimes.
He's the toady, pretty much.
Yeah, like, he's constantly on the receiving end of, like, the hero's efforts in beating him, and the villain's displeasure whenever he fails.
Yep.
Very toady, like, green-colored alien, pointy ears, pointy head. He technically has a disguise that he uses like on certain like episodes that is like not really a disguise.
It
makes him look like one of those old-time Japanese thieves where it's got like the fucking like kerchief kind of like wrapped around like like underneath the nostrils.
Yeah, it's just like, what are you doing, bro? This is not it.
It just doesn't work. Yeah. And yes, we're calling him Blackie, not Bracky or Buraki, depending on like what lame-ass literal translations you go with. We'll definitely have something to say about that when it comes to the translation options that we have for this show.
Yeah.
But next important member of the Vega Empire is Zuril, a minister who comes to assist Gandalf's forces halfway through the show, providing various strategies that really no one in the invasion force would have been able to come up with before. Like, he's the... I was about to say he's the Zhuge Liang of the group, but I feel like that is like, even then his strategies get undone like way more often. like it is kind of sad how like he gets brought in on this introductory episode and it looks like he is absolutely like presenting more of a threat to Grendizer, but then it just gets undone so swiftly in all subsequent episodes that it's like, oh, you're back to being just as useless as these guys.
Yeah, you all know the meme, I'm a genius. Oh no, that's him. He's the meme.
He visibly freaks out when things do not go his way.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of famous voice actors, Tomokazu Seki.
Yeah.
Which... Okay, so this leads into like a slight rabbit hole that I went down when I remembered that Gandalf and Zuril both have two voice actors that I recognize. And it turns out those two voice actors also have quite a bit of history with each other. Because there's apparently a 4-man voice acting unit involving those two and two others called Weiss. You know, like the German word for white.
Yeah.
And that kind of explains a lot. When you look at commonalities, like between the shows that they have done voice acting work in, you'll find that at least two of them are off. Like, if one is in a show, then chances are high that at least, like, one of the remaining three are going to also be in that show with him as well. I guess it culminated to the point in the late 90s where they eventually had their own like self-insert OC anime built around them called Weiss Cruz.
Oh my god, is that why it's called that? Holy shit.
Yes. I'm almost tempted to watch it because it's like, this sounds so up its own ass in terms of like its creation that I almost want to respect it. But part of me also goes, okay, but what if we had the same idea, but you guys were robot pilots?
Yeah, that would have been cooler. Also, like, is it
yeah, way cooler instead of like Bishonen assassins that go after like corrupt government officials and businessmen and criminals that the law can't touch.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because it's like, it is as silly and indulgent as you would think, especially with the idea of like, look at these handsome boys. Imagine how big of a female audience this probably gets. Probably explains why the manga adaptation of Weiss Cruz is specifically like designated as having its target demographic be shoujo.
Oh my god, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now. I've heard about this show back then. I had no idea it was directed by Koyasu. It was created by him.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It is all is all spearheaded by him, just so that he and his boys could all be in the same anime at once.
I mean, hell yeah. Make your own OC anime. Fucking more power to you guys.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's all we
it.
wanted to say. Yeah. I would have been remiss if I could not find any reason to just slip in this little insane factoid.
No.
So now we can get back to talking about our characters with someone that is absolutely batshit insane. Casado Zeola Whiter.
Okay.
Oh, this bastard. Basically, he is a Starker Knight with a very psychotic streak and personality that, like, he was basically the one responsible for pretty much sending Duke into a berserk frenzy with Grendizer by killing his parents and gloating to his face that he lost control of Grendizer, went berserk, and killed most everyone on planet Fleet.
Casado is, I feel like he's the second most changed character because in the original, I'm pretty sure he was like a one episode guy. You know, it's a villain of the week who killed Duke's parents. But here he's the pretty boy Joker. He's Bishonen Joker.
And his attitude is just so foul that, like, obviously Duke is just does not like him for what he has done and just like over like the pain that he's caused. But even on the side of the Vega Empire, they don't really think highly of Casado either.
They're like, oh, this guy might be too much of a freak, y'all.
It would honestly be better if he just got himself killed and so that he could like preserve what little honor he has as a knight going into battle. And as the middle name would probably imply, yes, this is the pilot of the Zeoladizer. Yeah, Casado is such a handful.
He's a lot.
Even so, the stuff that they do with him in the story, I do like ultimately by the end of it. Especially because for someone just so irredeemably awful that you expect him to get like the comeuppance he deserves. And boy, does he.
Oh, yeah, he does. This is a guy who's not going to... Let's just say he just does not like... He gets what he deserves, like you said. Yeah.
And our final two characters... It's kind of important to kind of mention these two more or less together because they tie into a pretty important aspect of the plot as it relates to Daisuke, and that is Terona Aqua Vega and Rubina Beryl Vega, twin sisters, one of which is like the crown princess of the Vega Empire. But starting with Terona, she is a Starker Knight and the pilot of Aquadizer, and is a very, very vengeful woman who wants to end Duke's life for the attempted murder of her younger sister. I say attempted because she was there when Grendizer went berserk at the start of the story. So there's multiple things to kind of like get across regarding Terona. That motivation I described about her is obviously not it betrays what are otherwise more complicated feelings that she actually has regarding Duke. But secondly, this is a case of like the showrunners clearly doing their fucking homework and like making some deep pulls from not just Grendizer's history, but even just the like Go Nagai's history overall. Back in 1975, months before the original Grendizer manga and anime would air, during the summer there was a short film that was aired in conjunction, I think, with a crossover versus film called Uchu Enban Daisenso, which is basically seen as like the pilot film for Grendizer. Like, it uses a lot of the same characters. The main character is Duke Fleet, and more than that, this is where Terona first showed up in, and it's important to mention that because when Grendizer actually aired in anime form on TV in the mid-70s, she was not in that anime. Instead, it was Rubina, the younger sister of Terona, who was engaged to Duke until she supposedly died amidst Grendizer's rampage on planet Fleet. It is important to note that, like, the intended romance of the Grendizer series is that, you know, Duke and Rubina were engaged with each other, which makes it a sort of star-crossed lovers type of situation because their factions are like opposed with each other. You know, Vega's the evil empire that's invading other worlds, and it leads to like, you know, initial thoughts of the marriage basically being like a ruse or a setup. In this case, it kind of Grendizer U kind of turns that on its head, where you do get to see what looks like Rubina getting killed outside of Duke's control, but the design of both Terona and Rubina, this is where it kind of all comes together with like that short film, is that Terona in the original Uchu Enban Daisenso was blonde-haired, while Rubina in the original 70s anime was red-haired. But obviously, like, those two characters never existed at the same time. Grendizer U decided to just go, nah, these two are twin sisters, and we are also going to swap their hair colors. So now Terona is the red-haired one, and Rubina is the blonde-haired one, which I think is honestly much more fitting considering their two personalities.
Yeah, until I had no idea about any of this because we put these notes together, because I was like, that feels like such a deep pull. That's like how you know the people who made the show are real ones.
This is like Shin Mazinger Z just like pulling out Energer Z during a mini story arc just because they fucking could.
Yeah, and like, oh, they thought a lot about this actually.
And I guess one last thing regarding Rubina, like to kind of show that this is like in contrast to Terona's character, is that, you know, she did survive the initial catastrophe on Planet Fleet, and, you know, she is fully aware of Duke's status as an enemy, like, when the story gets underway. But plot development, obviously, it shows that, like, she's willing to listen to reason and seek out the truth despite, like, her older sister's insistence that she doesn't. She doesn't want to believe that, like, the person that she actually did love and didn't pretend to as part of, like, some ruse or whatever as between these two empires. Like, she actually wants to know if, like, he is the same man that she loved to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because we love Koji in this show so much and fully believe that, like, him and Daisuke are the only real pairing. But even if Koji was not in this, I would still be perfectly happy with how the rest of the story is, because the dynamic between Duke and the two Vega sisters are just that well done for me personally. Melodramatic and soap opera-y at times, but then again, this is a super robot show. Like, when do we ever expect subtlety?
That's why we love it so much. Or we love super robot shows so much.
That's why we love it, so why do we recommend this?
Yes. Please tell us, Ark.
All right, so it's obviously a pretty big deal that in 2024 that we got a Grendizer anime with, like, the big budget treatment. After decades of, like, Grendizer just not getting much of, like, any representation at all. Like, I think you still would get, like, some acknowledgments of it in, like, various Go Nagai manga, because Go Nagai obviously hasn't forgotten about Grendizer specifically. And even then, like, in other materials like Super Robot Wars, there was a point where, like, you could expect Grendizer to show up, and then it just stopped. So it's really great, both for, like, you know, old Grendizer fans as well as, you know, new anime viewers that might not have, like, gotten any exposure to previous Grendizer media. This is a good modern super robot anime that is very well produced and is well served to both of those types of people. But particularly, this show has multiple instances of not just still frames for the show's mecha, but also mecha action sequences that have proper 2D animation. A detail that when I first saw it, particularly in episode 6, you know the fight I'm talking about, where I was like, what timeline is this? Because no one animates mecha like this anymore.
Yeah, like, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really kind of is, because everything is just 3D. Anytime, like, a vehicle or a mecha is shown in modern anime, it's never done in 2D anymore. So just seeing it done again, it's like, holy shit, they're actually doing it. It looks great.
And even when you get those moments of 3D CG, you know, animation, again, like, the techniques behind it have progressed so much that we have been long past the era of 3D CG just being the ugliest, most painful thing to watch ever. That now when you look at when it goes between, like, those 2D hand-drawn, like, stills, you know, stuff where it's, you know, they have an artist that can draw the robot just in a single pose and keep it there as part of the background and it looks fine. But then when you have it moving and it's 3D CG, like, the shading techniques are, like, they are as close as possible to how the 2D stills are drawn, that it's like, this is the least I have ever noticed when there is a difference between 2D and 3D, and that's pretty fucking commendable.
Yeah, it's really well done.
And, you know, we've said constantly during, like, our whole character discussion, but obviously, like, this anime does quite a number of things to differentiate it from, like, the 70s original, most of all being Koji's friendship with Daisuke. We love it. This is the one true pairing. And it really highlights that you can have a show like this that is incredibly like celebratory of both Mazinger's history and Grendizer, and still have it be a Grendizer story at its core. You know, it makes it feel, it helps get rid of that feeling that Grendizer seemed like it was having for the past few decades, where it's like it is a Mazinger series, but kind of not.
Like its own thing.
But now it feels more like, no, this is the real sequel to Mazinger. This is part of this franchise through and through.
Yeah, it really does a better job blending it in together with just Mazinger in general than the original series.
There's no great Mazinger to kind of get thrown in here, so I guess that's one thing that's in the favor of the original manga, because that was something that actually did exist in that. Not only was Mazinger in there as well, but so was Great Mazinger, but admittedly, I think that was only for just one chapter.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's something.
Yeah, again, it's more acknowledgement of its connection to the greater franchise than I think most people would have ever thought. That said, though, all right, we need to have a talk.
Yeah, please.
Well, we need a coming to Jesus moment, Buddha, whichever deity you prefer, about the current state of why the fuck we cannot have anime seasons that go past 13 fucking episodes, because this is the one caveat that we basically both have regarding Grendizer U. It's not one where I think it's, you know, hampers anyone's ability to enjoy the anime that we ultimately did get. But it's hard for us to really ignore it, considering how long we have been watching anime up to this point and seen so many different shows across multiple decades that, like, the shifts in, like, priority or trends or just even styles of production and animation are all still very clear in our heads. And the trend of anime being so adherent to like our current seasonal model is something that I'm starting to feel is ultimately it's doing more harm than good.
Yeah, some series can manage with that small like runtime, but the problem with that is you kind of feels like every episode has to be important or has to have something. You can't have like small episodes where the cast just chill out anymore. Like, you can't explore characters as much as you can on like a 24 episode show or something.
It's rough.
It's rough.
Especially because I always felt by the time that like the mid 90s and then especially through the 2000s rolled around that like most shows had basically agreed on, 24 to 26 episodes is a perfectly fine length that is long enough, but like obviously not too long that you still can't milk out a lot of good material from. It's usually the 50 episode series where it starts to kind of strain itself sometimes.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's like unless you're an anime being produced by Toei, like if you're One Piece or Pretty Cure or like any new Dragon Ball property that is going on, like Daima at the moment, it's like you seem to be the only one that is allowed to not adhere to the seasonal model.
Yeah, even Gundam is not free from following the seasonal model.
Yeah, and like this is Sunrise we're talking about, or I guess Bandai Namco Filmworks as they are after like all the different renamings, but fuck it, they're still Sunrise to us. It's real frustrating. This is the sort of thing where like the story that Grendizer U tells in these 13 episodes, it ultimately is a complete story, but I desperately need a follow-up story. We need another 13 episode season.
We do.
Especially for some of the things that are kind of left on the table in the wake of, the main plot being resolved. But regardless of that, I mean, even if we do have like a wish for like Grendizer U to be longer than it actually was, it coming out in 2024, I think was still one of the best things to ever happen, because in general, that was a good year for mecha anime. And for mecha anime specifically, I mean, it was really a good year for just this and Bang Brave Bang Bravern to basically carry the entire calendar year. Fuck all other anime that you had during that time. These were the only two that mattered.
Bang Bravern especially was the best surprise of that entire year for me. That was just an incredible show front to back. Holy shit.
And the fact that both shows were directed by those who's had earlier works involving animation on the Brave series is a fun coincidence.
Also, like, I think another thing about like both shows is feels like they were made by people who really love Mazinger or really love the Brave series. They wanted to make something for the people who grew up with these series. Like, this is for you, fellas. This is for us and for you.
Yeah, the sense of love for like its source material and inspirations shine through pretty strongly. Well, like with all that positivity, the next step would probably be to like figure out, where you can watch this. This is where it gets a bit more complicated. As this anime was produced by Manga Productions, a Saudi Arabia-owned company, watching it in official capacity is weird compared to most other modern anime these days. Like, you're not going to find this on Crunchyroll, like, just straight up. It's not on there. You can find it on YouTube, however, with English subs, but also... This is one thing that is actually impressive in regards to, like, the localization for Grendizer U, is that this is the first anime either of us are aware of in which there is an official Arabic translation. You get not just Arabic subs, but even, like, signage in, like, the animation itself. Like, there are, like, depending on, like, which version of the video files you get, you can get some where, like, the Japanese signage is replaced with Arabic text.
I have never seen an anime like this. Like this is like, it's crazy to me that an Arabic sub came out before anything else.
Which is all the more unfortunate that the official English subtitles are incredibly stiff and dampen a lot of the enjoyment that you would get from watching it. This is kind of the story behind it, especially for me, since I got around to watching Grendizer U before you did. Yeah. But I remember trying to watch it when it was airing week to week.
Oh, no.
And I couldn't make it past the second episode. The English subs were just that hard to sit through.
Oh, that is such a shame, because that's a barrier for a lot of folks.
We have grown up to the point where it's like, we might have been okay in the mid-2000s when we had, like, really shitty, overly literal, like, scanlations of manga or anime because it was still a niche thing and we didn't have any better. But, like, time and standards have passed since then that it's like, we shouldn't have to settle for something that feels like it came out of that time period.
I almost remember when this almost happened to Bang Braver, where they almost didn't localize it, but I guess people complained enough or something.
Yeah, it's like fucking... We're not gonna explain what exactly happens in the first episode. No. That's for the specific... time when we talk about Bravern, but the first episode of that anime made such a splash that, like, when people realized it was not on Crunchyroll, like, their voices were made extremely loud, and so that Crunchyroll would actually hear it, that by the time the second episode rolled around, they put the first two up, and because they were like, okay, we made a mistake, we should have put this on our lineup. And it's like, yeah, you damn well did make a fucking mistake.
Jesus, yeah.
Unsurprising, the two best anime of last year got shafted early on because people do not understand the worth of super robots.
So if you do want to experience this, what would they have to do, Ark?
Well, fortunately, we actually have an unofficial English translation provided by Waffle Subs that fixes all the grammatical issues with, like, the original script and, like, provides some much needed flourishes so that when you read all the dialogue, it's much more palatable to an English speaking audience. Like, you get the personality of those characters coming through a lot clearer now. That does mean, because this is an unofficial translation, you're gonna have to seek out those specific subtitles, which more than likely means sailing the high seas for, like, the video files that just have those already in there.
It's worth the effort. Trust us on this, folks.
It really is. That's your options. Do check out Grendizer U. It is a very good show, and that obviously means we're at the point where we got to get into our highlight discussion. Yeah. We're about to enter spoiler town. Mm-hmm. If you like what we've talked about regarding Grendizer U, turn off this podcast and go watch it right now. Again, it's only 13 episodes. If you have more free time than most, you can absolutely knock that out in an entire Saturday. It's fine.
You can even, like, watch it, like, once a week. You're still good.
Yeah, it'll be done soon. It's no problem. Mm-hmm. But for people that want to stick around because they have watched Grendizer U, or they want to know what we have to say about specific episodes, stick around because we've got a lot to say, especially revolving a certain psychopath.
Oh, we sure do.
All right, see you on the other side.
See you, folks.
Man, fuck Casado.
Oh, God, what a fucking gremlin. Holy shit.
It's another big reason why I was so glad to wait until the Waffle Subs translations were complete, because Waffle Man just really had the most fun, like, translating Kasado's dialogue and playing up how much of a shit he is.
Yeah, they gave him, he's definitely a lot more flowery, I've noticed, but it works, so I'm fine with it.
So, our highlight discussion for Grendizer U is covering 2 episodes, fairly separate from each other, one near the beginning of the show and another, like, kind of towards the end, near the final arc. Episodes 3 and 10. The first one we're talking about is obviously episode 3, Fury Painted in Crimson. As this is basically like the last episode of what was essentially the opening story arc. To give context for this episode, this is Duke's first big duel with Kasado in Rome, because the first episode started in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and then you saw footage of Paris burning, and now we go straight to Rome in Italy because Duke has a score to settle with this guy, while also trying to prove that he cannot lose control of Grendizer again.
And boy, do they play up Kasado here, because he loves gloating about how much he's set up to. He's like, yeah, remember when you killed your parents? You fucker.
Yeah. And this is also sort of thing where, like, as this battle goes on, because, like, it's important, like, with this episode, like, the battle just starts right away. You know, Duke is in Grendizer, Koji is in the Spacer, because he initially tried to pilot Grendizer because he was like, well, if Daisuke doesn't feel up to it, then I'll do my bro a solid and pilot the robot in his stead. Turns out, no, that doesn't work like that. So he gets the lame UFO.
At least he doesn't get stuck in it for half of the show like he does in the original Grendizer.
Yeah, his roles are, you know, better served elsewhere outside of the Spacer. It really is primarily just this battle where, like, you get the dynamic of, like, you know, yeah, that's right, because we never even mentioned how in the original anime, like, Koji had his own separate, like flying saucer vehicle that he was piloting, the TFO.
Yeah.
And I guess this almost serves as a replacement for that, like this instance of him piloting the Spacer. But, like, as the fight starts, one of those small details that I always enjoy picking up on is, you know, like, after Kasado, you know, starts doing all of his usual taunts, trying to get Duke all worked up and, like, going berserk, you get a moment where Kasado briefly loses his psycho composure as he notices Duke charge straight forward and realizes that something is different about the way that his enemy is composing himself. Like, it's a sudden realization of, like, oh fuck, he's actually gonna try and kill me. But, like, at least it's something where, like, Kasado, like, regains his composure in that moment pretty quickly. Though it's not the last time that he kind of has the realization that he's about to fuck up. The fight goes on quite a bit. Like, Rome is already devastated even by the time Grendizer shows up. But you just get, like, a lot of, like, fighting and chasing through the city streets. Koji makes contact with the Photon Power Labs to, like, kind of, like, update Sayaka and her dad on, like, the situation. The wording in the Japanese dub does not explicitly say super robot, but I appreciate the subs translating it as such when Koji is describing Grendizer to them.
I think it's a better choice.
You know, it's like, it's a genuine, for real super robot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're goddamn right it is.
Yeah. It is the most super robot so far in the show.
And as, like, the fight goes on, the Vega Empire is still, like, kind of, like, out in space, orbiting around the moon, because, like, they're waiting to see, like, how Kasado does in this whole battle, since it was basically his idea to go down to Earth and just start a bunch of shit in order to lure out Daisuke, to lure out Duke. I know, the names are interchangeable, but whatever. I try to make sure I use them based on the context of what would the character say. It's like referring to Goku and Kakarot at the same time.
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
Like, you use it based on who's talking to who. Yeah, it's just crazy to know, like, kind of like, this is like the first major battle, like a real battle, not counting the moment in episode 1 where he comes in at the end and just annihilates the saucer beasts with little effort. This is episode 3, and Gandalf's forces are already gearing up to just blow up the entire planet with a giant fucking cannon. They're wasting no time.
No. Even
Even if it kills Kasado, it's no skin off their back.
I don't think they care about Kasado, which, you know, fair. Yeah, the amount of, like, fucking large-scale destruction in this show is kind of a little nuts, because it's like, this is episode 3, and we've already seen cities razed to the ground, and that level of destruction is never going to stop.
Especially weird considering, you know, the first 3 cities we see get absolutely annihilated are the major cities in the 3 major countries that Grendizer was exported to. I'm sure that wasn't going to upset any international audiences. On top of the escalation, there's also tension mounting because obviously they're preparing the cannon. And then there's the matter of like Daisuke is still clearly wrestling with like the anger he has towards Kasudo and possibly going overboard with Grendizer. This is like the last time we see for a good while of Koji having a detonator on hand because in the last episode he gave a bomb ring to Daisuke as like a promise saying, hey, you're the only one that could pilot Grendizer. I know how scared you are about piloting it because of losing control. If you ever lose control, don't worry, buddy. I promise I will blow you the fuck up with this ring.
Get you a bro who'll detonate your bomb if you ever go psycho.
But fortunately, for both of their sakes, Daisuke does not lose control of Grendizer this time. Instead, he just takes Zeolodizer's head. Just shoots out a well-timed anti-gravity storm and just destroys the robot's body entirely, leaving only the head just for it to fall in Grendizer's hand and give Kasudo like the biggest robotic death stare. Oh, it's so good.
It is pretty good. Although I don't think, if Kasudo died right there, I don't think that would have been a bad thing either, but you know.
The show has other things planned for him that definitely like make his character feel a bit more worth it as far as presence.
Yeah.
At least with the threat of Zeolodizer gotten rid of, there's still the bigger problem. Gandalf's about to shoot the giant cannon. He's about to not piss on the moon. He's about to piss on the earth. And Blackie has prepared the countdown, from which it starts from 7, because Gandalf was born on the 7th month of the year. I think Blackie has Baron Ashura beat in terms of over-the-top simping for your villainous superiors, but whatever. At least Gandalf seems pleased by it.
He's into it. I kind of
love it. You see that smile. He loves it.
He loves it. He was like, oh, that's a great idea, actually. Oh, yeah, we're doing that.
Oh.
I love...
Oh, it's so easy just having a toady that could kiss my ass all day.
I love this entire scene because it's just so mustache-twirling villainy, but I kind of appreciate it. It works for a Super Robot show, especially. You don't need depth with your villains. Sometimes it's okay for them to be just evil.
And the only scene better than this is what comes immediately after, because who was ready for Grendizer in the third fucking episode to just one-shot the Super Vega cannon with a surface-to-air-to-space screw crusher punch? Definitely not me.
No.
Nor you.
Also, like, fucking, you don't just see, you see him, like, decimate entire fleets with just this punch, and it's like, I am pretty sure Grendizer in the original show did not have this level of power. This is like scaling it up to a ludicrous degree.
Yeah, but like we have never seen even a Majin Kaiser tornado crusher punch that goes this long of a distance. Like this is approaching Aquarion's Mugen punch level of absurdity.
Yeah, and it's like it's just showing us, nope. Yeah, this is why this robot is so scary. This is why people kind of fear it a little.
Also makes you wonder, gee, maybe this is the reason why Grendizer never showed up in a lot of other Mazinger projects afterwards, because it would just fuel all those bullshit internet arguments about who was more powerful.
The answer is, it doesn't fucking matter. But anyways.
Yeah. But regardless, like, after that fantastic display, it is the thing that ultimately cements Daisuke's status as the new hero on Earth. Like, better than anything else. That is the screw crusher punch that helps Daisuke get over his initial hurdle of ever wanting to pilot Grendizer again. He knows he can do it. He knows he was able to do it because he had his best bro in the whole fucking universe there to back him up. And that end of the battle marks the end of our show's time visiting the 3 major countries that Grendizer was popular in. Back to Japan, everyone!
It just took us 3 episodes, but we're back now. We're back to our original home country.
Yeah. Back to the Photon Power Labs, where we get our introduction. Daisuke, now with his identity as Duke Fleet known, gets more of a formal introduction to Professor Yumi and Genzo Uman, his new adopted father.
I noticed like this is the difference between Uman and like Kenzo right away. Not like right away, but I didn't notice. But Kenzo not returning Duke's handshake, I think that's just like, oh, that's showing his distrust towards him because he's an alien.
Yeah, although not Kenzo technically, because that was Koji's dad. I think he just meant like Professor Yumi.
Oh, Yumi. I meant Yumi.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Kenzo.
Genosuke.
Yes.
Admittedly, for what it's worth, I often forget that Professor Yumi even has a first name.
I do as well. I meant Yumi, but yes.
Yeah, he's the professor.
The professor.
You know? But after the introduction, the next best scene of this particular episode, Koji goes to the hangar because, after the events of episode 1, Mazinger Z, it actually put up a decent enough fight in the beginning against the saucer beasts, but all it took was just 2 of them ganging up on him at once and just completely destroying him. They recover the parts from Riyadh, but Koji goes to the hangar to see just the battered, torn apart remains of Mazinger standing in the hangar bay, having a one-sided conversation about just like, man, it's so bad what happened, but goddamn, that was a hell of a rocket punch you gave him, Mazinger. You really showed him what for. And that breast fire at the end, oh man, kick ass. More or less just talking to himself over the fact that it's like, he feels like he failed Mazinger, letting it get beat up like that, and starts like crying, being like, don't worry, buddy, you'll get better soon.
Bro's just passionate. He's just super passionate this entire show. I love it.
Robots are a man's romance.
Exactly.
And women's. And non-binaries. we're not being sexist in this particular statement.
It's everybody's romance.
Exactly. Seriously, it proves more than anything there's genuine relationships to be had between robots and pilots. Mm-hmm. Like, that could be just as legit as any other, like, normal relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be one that's sexual in nature, but just something that shows that there is a bond.
Yeah.
And there is a bond here. And if Daisuke was not in this show, like, this would be the biggest bond entirely. But instead, it's Koji and Daisuke. They still have more chemistry than anyone, even more chemistry than their robots.
It's just let the bros kiss, please. Just let them have one little bro kiss.
It's a time-honored tradition with robot anime. Even if it's not intended, you just gotta roll with the idea that, yes, there is clearly some homoeroticism going on between these main characters.
There's so much going on.
Koji, Daisuke, they have a little bit of a talk after the little, like, dialogue with Mazinger, talking about just kind of the usual platitudes, thanking Koji for, like, helping him stay under control. Koji trying to be like, what are you talking about? You saved them all. That was all on you. And it was like, man, if we were able to rebuild Mazinger, I bet I could make it as good as Grendizer. And it's like, lol, no, you can't. Why? It was a gift from God. That's certainly a way of describing Grendizer or any super robot.
I know, like, oh yeah, God just gave it to me. I was like, okay, jeez.
Yeah, God gave it to his people, and that was more than enough reason for an entire intergalactic army to initially try and invade that planet, fail several times before deciding, okay, we'll just make a temporary truce, but this will just bide us some time until we can get someone to steal it for us. Which, speaking of...
Yeah.
If we want to talk about people that tried to steal Grendizer long ago, we got to get to the scene with Kasado's interrogation.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, you do get the slightly gross scene of him digging out his eyeball because it's actually an artificial one used to communicate with, like, his, like, assistant, which is really just more of, like, an abuse victim, really.
Yeah.
Like she just gets so much pain thrown her way having to serve Kasado, but, like, afterwards, Daisuke, Koji, they go into the cell to ask Kasado, why'd he do it? What was he trying to gain from, like, breaking that truce between the Vega Empire and Planet Fleet, stealing Grendizer, murdering his parents. And it brings up something that, even at this point, knowing that the show was going to be 13 episodes, I was like, oh, there's not going to be enough time to get into this. And that is the mention of Great King Vega.
Oh.
Because...
yeah.
Great King Vega is apparently, like, the true ruler, the king of the Vega Empire, who's apparently existed for thousands of years, but no one knows that he is still around. And Kasado was apparently approached by the Great King himself with the mission to steal Grendizer.
I really hope we get a season 2 because I want to see what their version of Great King Vega is. Because they're building up to be the biggest bad.
Like, the glimpses you get of him are all, like, in silhouette, but it doesn't fail to make him come off as extremely demonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, his origins and the implied threat of, like, this absentee king that is still, like, controlling everything from the shadows is, like, we deserve to see it paid off on, but we still don't know like if or when Manga Productions is going to look at this and be like, yeah, you know what, let's get another 13 episodes out of this. I hope it does.
I hope it does. We still haven't had word of that, and I'm a little worried.
But after that interrogation, we get some setup for what the next story arc will be, as like a smaller like flying saucer craft crash lands in the lake outside of the Photon Power Labs, carrying a woman, Naida, who is actually Kasado's assistant, but apparently childhood friends with Duke. And this is after, by the way, she gets accosted briefly by Gandalf when he realizes, now that Kasado's out of the picture, Duke is still a problem. Let's use his woman to finish the job.
Yeah, and it leads up to the next episode, which we're not talking about, but it definitely pays off a lot of that episode in very tragic ways.
Yeah, this is a show that will love to revel in tragedy for major moments. But at least when you get like this preview of what's to come, for me personally, more anime needs slow music lead-in rather than hard cut to credit sequences.
Yeah.
Especially when your ending song of choice is by fucking Bandmaid.
The ending song is a real fucking banger, and I love it every time it pops up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, JoJo did it. More anime this does it. More anime needs to do something like this.
So let's jump ahead to our second highlight episode, all the way to episode 10, The Rise of X. We talked a lot about like Mazinger's presence in Grendizer U, even though it's like Mazinger Z, the robot itself, gets fucking totaled like at the end of the first episode. The Rise of X, meanwhile, is Mazinger's great return.
And boy, what a fucking return it is.
So this episode also requires some additional context since, we just skipped past several episodes. But the Photon Power Labs is in the midst of a ground invasion by Blackie as Daisuke gets separated from the lab during an intense fight with Torona. This is after he is initially detained in like a detention cell because of a previous incident in which he meets Rubina in secret because she is trying to like basically send coded messages to him asking to meet Duke and be like, hey, are you really the same Duke who tried to kill me? And that obviously does not go well with Professor Yumi's like unwavering skepticism towards aliens.
It might have been a bit of a like.
Yeah, he got a bit extreme with like his reaction to the whole event, even though it's like, Koji, Sayaka, everyone vouching for Daisuke's character. But it's in that moment that like it gives enough weakness to the Photon Power Lab that Blackie is able to invade the labs themselves, fucking cause massive damage. The Spacers are able to go out in battle. Daisuke manages to get into Grendizer, fights off Torona before they get like separated from the main battle and end up on Okami Island. But Koji, meanwhile, all this time has been inside the Photon Power Labs trying to find Professor Yumi and then get past all of Blackie's foot soldiers to get to Mazinger's hangar, where the new rebuilt Mazinger awaits.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, getting back quickly to like the opening and endings for this show, these two episodes, watching them again in a vacuum, is also a great way of highlighting the slight changes and updates to the animation in the opening sequence because of the one shot that you get in the opening during the latter half of the show, where you just get that like pan around shot of Grendizer and Mazinger fighting back to back. And it's like, I think they switched that even before Mazinger enters battle once again for real. So it's already teasing you the idea that, yeah, Mazinger's not out of the picture yet. These two are going to fight together. Yeah, there's a lot that's being all built up to this particular episode. Koji's big debut with a rebuilt Mazinger is the main one. But there's also like more development that's given towards Duke and Torona's relationship, because after multiple instances of the two fighting, particularly episode 6, in which that is probably like the standout episode in terms of 2D animation, because holy shit, that fight is incredible to watch.
It's great.
But here, they're in a situation now where they have to form a temporary truce because guess who's back?
It's our favorite little shitlords.
Kasado, who was apparently piloting the Marine Spacer in secret. It's a weird swerve on the part of the show itself, because the opening not only show the Spacers, but also who is supposed to be piloting them. Like Sayaka pilots the double Spacer, Maria pilots the drill spacer, and it was implied that Hikaru would be piloting the marine spacer. But it turns out, no, she wasn't.
No.
That was Kasuto, because apparently worked out a temporary deal with Hikaru to try and be like, all right, fine, I'll help you on the promise that I can be someone worthy of piloting Grendizer, because that's still his ultimate goal. He's still trying to steal that robot for himself and Great King Vega. Yeah, no, he used this opportunity to just reveal himself, steal Grendizer, and then start blowing up the island in an attempt to just murder Duke and Torona.
Okay, two things actually. One, I actually kind of love the black lasers when Grendizer is in evil mode. It's like such a good visual and a good effect. And two, I love how this show doesn't even pretend that Kasuto is going to have a redemption arc. Even when he's helping out Duke in the past few episodes of Secret, it's like, no, he's still kind of a bitch. He's still going to betray everyone. Come on.
Like, Hikaru is not pleased by this, obviously, but I'm also going to say this is partly her fault, because she should have seen this coming.
See this. What part of this man said, oh yes, I think this guy is going to turn into a good person.
At least this is the episode where we'll finally get to see her make good on her word of what happens to someone who has a wicked heart.
Yeah.
But as like the whole Duke and Torona sequence is happening, like we still get shots of Koji and Professor Yumi fighting their way through the photon power labs, getting to the hangar. I do really like how just that sequence, whenever it swaps to Koji, it genuinely does feel like it's like we switched gears to just any episode of the Mazinger Z anime, where basically like the biggest hurdle that Koji has to get over is he is not in Mazinger, which means Mazinger isn't able to do anything and he is vulnerable. How does he get around this problem? So that's basically like what a lot of the challenge is that he is getting through. There's one thing, quickly getting back to Torona and Duke as they are like trying to avoid the eye of Kasuto and like figure out a plan to get him out of Grendizer. Even though it's a truce, Torona is still very distrustful of Duke, asking all kinds of questions, including something so loaded as how would he define a best friend? I'll tell you, I'd be at a loss other than simply going, I know it's when I see it.
It is a hell of a question to ask a person you are obviously crushing odds hard, like Torona is with Duke, because that girl has it bad.
Yeah, the flashbacks especially hammer this home even more. She is going through some rough shit while trying to like keep up appearances of being like a proud Starker knight who is putting down such a who she claims to be a villainous character. Torona has it real bad right now.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would have preferred if Duke just came out and be like, oh yeah, I would define my best friend as Koji Kabuto.
That guy over there, he's the best, man. I'll love him. I'd do anything for that guy. It's like, yeah, understandable.
And then she would try and kill him.
Can't believe Koji would die by jealousy. I mean, I can, but you know.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that hot ladies tried to kill him. You remember Gamiya Q3?
I do. Another day for Koji Kabuto.
But now we got to get back to Koji getting a hold of Mazinger. It's really funny when you see like the rebuilt Mazinger standing in the hangar and just there's only a few foot soldiers left behind to kind of stand guard, just kind of complaining about the shift they've been given, but also being like, man, hopefully this invasion goes well, that Blackie gets like a fucking huge reward, then we could just mooch it off of him.
Yeah.
What a bunch of shits.
Yeah.
And leads to one of the best moments where they get the jump on the foot soldiers guarding Mazinger. They tie one of them to the outside railing, and as like the railing is like kind of opening up, there's just the one dude hanging off, and his only line is, "Save me, bro!"
You know they had fun with this, with the translation, the fan translation, all this one.
Like, these goons are so non-threatening.
No.
Even outside of the fact that they managed to spring a successful invasion of the Photon Power Labs and like cause a ton of destruction and kill a few personnel, it's like, nah, they're still goobers.
Yeah.
This is the culmination of Grendizer U managing to still be a Grendizer show while still having enough room to celebrate Mazinger itself and not be overshadowed by that legacy. Cause holy shit, Mazinger X.
I was not expecting a Mazinger upgrade in the Grendizer show. Like, an original upgrade too.
and new name as well. And it's simple too. You just replace the Z with
X,
another letter.
yeah.
It makes you wonder, how did no one up until 2024 come up with the idea of Mazinger X?
You could tell they probably high-fived each other, or they were just like, wait, holy shit, how did we never think of this, guys? What the fuck is wrong with us? Yeah, like, it took this long.
It's like someone came into like a meeting, like with a whiteboard and just the pitch, and just wrote down Mazinger Z, like just the letter Z at the end. Now watch this. Half erases the Z, makes another cross line through it, turns it to an X. Everyone freaks the fuck out.
The entire room explodes.
Give that guy a raise.
You're a genius.
To briefly describe this Mazinger, because we obviously could not describe this one in the non-spoiler section of the podcast. You know, it looks similar to Mazinger Z, like at a glance, but it's the finer details that make it different. For start, Koji ducks with the head through the jet powder, which is red colored like all the other powders, but it's a lot closer in style to, you know, like the Great Mazinger's powder, for instance, where it looks more like a mini futuristic jet plane. The chest plates on the front are back to being like their angular style that they are like in the Toei anime and like all subsequent entries. And then they've got like little red fins on the forearms. It made me think as well of Majin Kaiser's skull, where it also has those similar like red fins on the edge, which also double as like the breast trigger ammunition clips. But most importantly, it gets a new Scrander in the form of the X Scrander. And it's basically the Kaiser Scrander under a different name because it has a similar X shape and it looks rad as hell.
It's so cool. Also, I think I found out why it's called Mazinger X, by the way, through a very quick like Google search.
Okay, do tell.
It is the deepest cut I've ever seen. This is a deeper cut than like Corona.
I think I might know what it's going towards, but continue.
There is a South Korean film remake of Grendizer called Run Mazinger X.
Okay, that I did not know. I thought for some reason you were going to say it was like pulling from like another obscure Go-Nagai robot called Grendizer X.
No.
But no, I was not aware that there was a fucking South Korean fucking fan film.
There was a fan film called Mazinger X, and that's where they might have pulled the name Mazinger X from. Oh, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah, any image of that thing I know is absolutely going in the video version of this episode.
Please.
So naturally, I had to do a bit more investigation on this. Run Mazinger X is indeed a South Korean short film, but it's more fair to say it is a plagiarist or bootleg short film, as it takes footage from the original UFO Robo Grendizer and slightly modifies the robot designs, implying what is clearly shown as Grendizer is in fact the super robot Mazinger X. Most I could find was details from an Italian fan site known as Go-Nagai World, plus a trailer on YouTube. And it is a trip. Even if no one on Grendizer U's production will come out and acknowledge this is where the Mazinger X name comes from, I'm endlessly amused at the idea that they would be aware of something that is beyond niche that I like to think this is the case. Anyway, now back to the show. I was not prepared for this.
I wasn't either. All I did was just do a quick Google search, and that's what came up.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Everything about Mazinger X's debut is so beautiful. My boy Koji's been waiting for this day. He's crying tears of joy. We'll always love you, Mazinger.
And we'll always love you, Koji.
The fight at the Photon Power Labs is ultimately resolved thanks to Koji coming in to save the day. And it feels so good that, again, it does not hijack the Grendizer U story at any point, because this is still about Duke. This is still about Grendizer, which means, what's up with those guys? What are they doing? They're still back on the island, and Kasado's still fucking shit up.
I know there's a reason why Grendizer tried to kill Koji when it tried to ride it, but still, the fact that it went no to Koji, but Kasado, that guy, yeah, he can ride me. He's fine.
Well, they're both Starker Knights.
Yeah, that's
the key factor.
That is the truth. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. Like, the Starker Knights really should have been like more like.
Yeah,
discerning about who they were going to put into their ranks.
Yeah, actually, that's on the stock.
Actual mental stability should be a key part of being a Starker Knight.
Yeah, that's less on Grendizer and more on the Stalker Knights. They should have vetted their recruits more. Yeah,
especially because at this point, during the whole scuffle, Duke and Torona basically manage to get off a surprise attack on Grendizer itself. You know, Duke runs distraction while Torona goes to her Aquadizer sword, and like just by like channeling energy into it, like through herself, like she manages to fire off an Aqua Blast right at Grendizer's back, and it's enough that like Duke obviously shows some concern for Torona. This apparently is Kasudo's berserk button. He fucking hates when Duke is getting all the attention.
He hates it. Also, Duke, Kasudo is my friend. When was he your friend? Since when? When has that ever happened? What are you talking about?
Yeah, this is an exchange that really strained credulity for me. Like the first time I viewed it, and it did not change at all on the second.
No, it didn't. It makes no sense.
I can kind of get what the intent is supposed to be. Maybe the fact that, like, especially after beating Kasudo, he felt that, like, he no longer was in that position where he needed to just be like, I fucking hate that dude. I want him dead. Yeah. I think it's just more a case where it's like Duke is someone that, like, just wants to be, like, a nice guy and, like, values, like, friendships and, like, probably at this point is thinking, like, maybe because of the fact he was, like, under Hikaru's orders secretly helping him when he was piloting Grendizer, that, like, wanted to think maybe there would be a chance of like redemption for him.
Yeah.
But no, that was never gonna fucking happen because Kasudo finally meets his end by the way of Hikaru actually demonstrating what she meant when she said she would kill someone who was wicked. Death by anti-gravity storm is some fucked up shit.
You get to see him like twist and turn into like a black hole. It's a fucking brutal visual. And it's so much more brutal than it was in the original show, because in the real show, he was just hit by Grendizer's gravity storm and exploded. That was it.
Yeah, which, this is getting back to another parallel, like, that came to mind when I finished watching episode 3 and then 10, like, basically back-to-back, going through those again, is realizing that, yeah, Goldizer and Kasudo both go out the exact same way.
Through gravity storm.
Which almost makes me wish, though, might have been a bit extreme in terms of graphic content, but I wish the anti-gravity storm that hit Kasudo left only his head.
Oh my god, that would have been way too dark. But I get what you're saying.
Just the head left there on the floor in like a pained, screaming expression. God. Like, this is why you do not fuck with Hikaru Makiba.
Man, this is why I hope we get a second season, or why I wish there were more episodes, because I really would have liked to have known Hikaru's whole deal about why she's like that.
Yeah, especially if we could get like a ton of moments in a second season where like she's demonstrating those similar powers a lot more often.
I don't know if I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say never. I'm still going to hope for a second season. There's still time.
It's not like Shin grade Mazinger where I feel that that ship has already passed.
Yeah, there's no hope of that.
We're still less than a year out from like the 1-year anniversary of this show. We'll see how things pan out. That said, though, to finish up the discussion, you know, the slow music lead-in into Protect You by Bandmade, you know, still here in all these episodes. But this episode also ends with like one of those rare post-credit sequences. Works to signal the final arc of the show and what it is all about. All I can really say, this romance is only going to lead to tragedy. Even though it is very heartwarming in the moment, because it's very much, it is Rubina showing up and basically confirming in her own words after all these events that, yes, you are the same Duke that I fell in love with. I knew you had not changed. Of course, that's not what Torona wants to hear.
No. Oh, she does not want that at all.
Man, it's a good thing that we didn't talk about like the 2 episodes after this as like our actual highlights, because that starts to become less about the robot action and more just more just like romantic drama.
Yeah.
Admittedly, romantic drama that I was actually pretty engaged with, but there's so much other cool shit that happens in this show that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about it here.
Yeah, like we've already talked about everything we've liked so far, and I think we made good choices on the shows, on the episodes, I mean.
Yeah, Grendizer U is a really great anime. It really is such a shame that like the official way of watching it has like the caveats that it does as far as translation, because it is like, yeah, considering how easy it is for most people that like are into watching anime these days, they just stick with like whatever's on the Crunchyroll lineup or any other streaming service that might have it. Like, it's so much more convenient for them to get it through those options. Whereas us, we're able to really appreciate this because we take the extra step necessary to ensure that we're getting the proper, best quality version that we can to watch. Yeah. Which, admittedly, even then with this, with how quickly like these subtitles, these updated translations were put out, is like, I'm impressed at the speed that they were able to come out from Waffle Subs, considering it was like, I think it was only by the time October of last year rolled around, like a few weeks after the show ended, that all the translations were done. You could still spot here and there that there are some translation inaccuracies that crop up, like obvious like mistakes that probably did not get caught on the first pass, as well as stuff that really should have been changed, like calling him Blackie and not Buraki. Yeah, it's like real jarring when you consider all the other names are like translated exactly like they're supposed to. It's weird. It is still a really strong anime. I'm always glad that, I guess, even if it is infrequent compared to a lot of other anime IPs out there, I do appreciate that like Dynamic Pro's properties are able to get these sort of like infrequent anime adaptations at like random points, just because when they decide to greenlight these projects, they're doing it with the idea that like there are people out there in the industry that are championing this idea, that they want to work on it and do it well. Like, they're not doing it out of an obligation of like, well, you want to do this to like write some sort of zeitgeist or like tie in with merchandising or what have you. It's like, no, we just want to make a new Super Robot anime, or we want to make a new Devilman, or we want to make a new something that Go Nagai has done, because that man has quite the portfolio and is still alive, still to this day, keep making more manga. Just the crazy part.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. Well, I would be a little shocked if suddenly we get like a new Cutie Hoodie or something, but I just love that we're in 2025 now in the moment of recording, and we're still getting Go Nagai adaptations. I hope that never stops. Even if it's like there's like a few years between them.
I definitely feel like it'll still continue as long as Go Nagai draws breath. Yeah. I guess when he eventually passes from this world, we'll have to see how things at Dynamic Pro shake out. But for the time being, I mean, a fucking new Grendizer anime designed to celebrate 50 years of the original Grendizer. Like, outside of the few like criticisms we've levied as far as like the short episode count and just not having enough time to really delve into certain story or character beats that just kind of have to get sped through, I still really fucking love this show. It was both worth the watch and worth the wait for the actually good English subs.
Yeah, and also, here's the thing. As much as we complain about like the episode length, you are still getting a full story, at least. There's still like some lingering threads, but it's not like Shin Mazinger's ending.
Even then, Shin Mazinger Z, I would still say, is like, even with like that monster of a cliffhanger, still manages to be my favorite mecha anime of all time because of like the strength of the rest of its story. As far as I'm concerned, it still tells a complete story.
It does.
It just leaves you a tease that is like, that should have been followed up on a year or two after, but yes, at least this is a complete story because they're not having to worry about adapting a long-running Shonen Jump manga and then leave people blue-balled on a cliffhanger like Dandadan.
Man, I was like, oh, we're just ending it there, huh? Okay, sure, guys.
See what we're getting at when we say that the current seasonal model for anime is doing more harm than good.
Yeah, we just end on an episode where it shouldn't have ended, where it doesn't feel like a proper season ending.
Give us 26 episode seasons again, damn it!
Please.
It's reminding me so much as well. All the upcoming like mecha anime I'm looking forward to that's still in production, and just having to brace for the fact that that new Pad Labor is probably going to be 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Or that new Macross anime is probably going to be 13 episodes.
We just have to deal with that for now, I guess.
At least we still get stuff like this where they're able to like be a satisfying watch even with the short length.
Yeah.
I guess it's better to be left wanting for more than left not wanting anything at all.
Yeah.
At least not wanting anything if it was bad.
Yeah.
Because if this was shit, A, we would not be talking about this, and B, we would definitely be wishing that this was not explored any further.
We'd just be like, man, remember that Grendizer show? Wow, it fucking sucked.
Fukuda, you fucking hack.
Why don't you just go them seed your way to the trash bin? Wait, that made no sense. Well, you know what I mean.
It made enough sense. I got the intent.
Yeah.
Whatever. For now, at least as far as I'm concerned, Mitsuo Fukuda, you're not on my shit list for this.
Yeah.
You're fine.
You're fine. You're good.
Just I know you somehow convinced the masses that we needed a Gundam Seed movie in 2024. I don't know fucking why, but whatever. This excuses it.
I mean, get that money, I guess. Also, did he do Majestic Prince? I don't think he did, right? No, that was just whatever.
I forget.
You're okay as long as you're not working on Gundam.
Yes. No one cares about Cosmic Era.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. Regardless, thank you, Neff. Once again, thank you everyone at home for listening to this. Hopefully this was a good sign of like there are still good mecha anime that could be made even in the modern era. That it is not a dead genre. Fuck you, assholes.
Still alive and kicking even after all these years.
Output may not be as high as it was in previous decades, but if the quality is at least this good, then it's like, who am I to complain? So we'll see you for the next episode. Keep you on your toes as far as what Mazinger, Gundam, Macross, or Brave series-related property we're going to talk about next, because there's still a lot on the table.
And you'll know what it is next week. See you all then.